write the number the arrow points to as a decimal. So we need to write decimal values, but if we look at our number line, to get from 0 to 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, so each of these lines is 1/5. So first, it's useful to think how we write 1/5 as a decimal. Remember, we can change 1/5 into tenths because tenths have a decimal place value. 5 times 2 is 10 and 1 times 2 is 2. So 1/5 is the same as 0.2. So after 0, the first line would be 0.2 and the second line, where the arrow is pointing, must be 0.4, because if 1/5 is 2 tenths, then 2/5 will be 4 tenths. So where is the arrow pointing to now? Well, it's the first line after one whole. So that's 1.2, because we have one whole and then another fifth, and 1/5 is the same as 0.2, but if we have one whole, that's 1.2. Where is the arrow now? Well, that's 1 and then 1, 2, 3, 4/5, and 1 and 4/5 is 1.8, because 4/5 is equivalent to 8 tenths. And now we have 2.6, because it's after 2 and it's 1, 2, 3/5 after 2, and 3/5 is the same as 6 tenths, so that's 0.6, and it's after the 2 wholes. So let's look at this slightly different number line. This time, to get from 0 to 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, so each of these little lines is 1/4. Now we can work out 1/4 as a decimal. We can't change it into tenths because 10 isn't in the 4 times table, but 100 is a multiple of 4 because 4 times 25 is 100. So we can do the same to the numerator. 1 times 25 is 25, and 25 hundredths as a decimal is 0.25, because the denominator of 100 tells us that we can't go past the hundredths place value, and the second digit after the decimal point is the hundredths digit. So where is our arrow pointing to here? Well, it's after 1, and it's 1 2/4 after 1. So 1 and 2/4 is 1.5. That's because 2/4 is the same as 50 hundredths, but rather than writing 0.50, we don't need zeros on the end, so we just write 0.5. But it's after 1, so it's 1.5. The other way to think about this is to notice that the arrow is pointing right in the middle or halfway between 1 and 2, and 1/2 is the same as 2/4, and 1/2 as a decimal is 0.5, but because the arrow is after one whole, we need to write 1.5. So here the arrow is pointing to 0.25 because that's just 1/4 after 0, and 1/4 is 0.25. Now the arrow is pointing to 2.75 because it's after 2, and it's 3/4 after 2, and 3/4 is 75 hundredths, so 0.75. Finally, we have 4 and 1/4, so that's 4.25. Now, for this number line, we can see that we have some longer lines and some shorter lines. If we just look at our longer lines, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these longer lines represent whole numbers, and these shorter lines must represent halves. So we can write 1/2 as a decimal. 2 times 5 is 10, 1 times 5 is 5, so 1/2 is the same as 0.5 because that's 5 tenths. So where is the arrow pointing to here? Well, remember these longer lines were whole numbers, and we have 1, 2, 3, so that's pointing to the number 3. Here, the arrow, remember these short lines were halves, so this arrow is pointing to 1/2, which is 0.5. Here, it's 1/2 after 5, so that's 5.5. And here, if we look at our longer lines, we have 5, 6, 7, and a half, so that's 7.5. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that was helpful. If you're a teacher or a parent, then please subscribe or go to keystage2maths.com to download resources for this lesson and many more. That's all for now. I'll see you in the next video.